Thomas Stearns Eliot was a poet, essayist, publisher, playwright, literary critic and editor. He is considered as one of the 20th century's major poets. He is a central figure in English-language modernist poetry. The Eliots were a Boston Brahmin family, with roots in England and New England. Eliot's paternal grandfather, William Greenleaf Eliot, had moved to St. Louis, Missouri, to establish a Unitarian Christian church there. His father, Henry Ware Eliot, was a successful businessman, president and treasurer of the hydraulic press brick company in St. Louis. His mother, Charlotte Champ Stearns, who wrote poetry, was a social worker, which was a new profession in the U.S. in the early 20th century. Thomas Eliot was born on September 26, 1888 at St. Louis, Missouri. Eliot was the last of 6 surviving children. Known to family and friends as Tom, he was the namesake of his maternal grandfather, Thomas Stearns. As he was often isolated, his love for literature developed. Once he learned to read, the young boy immediately became obsessed with books, favoring tales of savage life, the Wild West, or Mark Twain's thrill-seeking Tom Sawyer. From 1898 to 1905, Eliot attended Smith Academy, the boys' college preparatory division of Washington University, where his studies included Latin, Ancient Greek, French, and German. He began to write poetry when he was 14. His first published poem, A Fable for Feasters, was written as a school exercise and was published in the Smith Academy Record in February 1905. He also published 3 short stories in 1905, Birds of Prey, A Tale of a Whale and The Man Who Was King. Eliot lived in St. Louis, Missouri for the first 16 years of his life at the house on Locust Street where he was born. After going away to school in 1905, he only returned to St. Louis for vacations and visits. Following graduation from Smith Academy, Eliot attended Milton Academy in Massachusetts for a preparatory year, where he met Schofield Thayer, who later published The Wasteland. He studied at Harvard College from 1906 to 1909, earning a Bachelor of Arts in an elective program similar to comparative literature in 1909 and a Master of Arts in English Literature the following year. Because of his year at Milton Academy, Eliot was allowed to earn his Bachelor of Arts after 3 years instead of the usual 4. After working as a philosophy assistant at Harvard from 1909 to 1910, Eliot moved to Paris where, from 1910 to 1911, he studied philosophy at the Sorbonne. He attended lectures by Henri Bergson and read poetry with Henri Alban Fournier. From 1911 to 1914, he was back at Harvard studying Indian philosophy and Sanskrit. Whilst a member of the Harvard Graduate School, Eliot met and fell in love with Emily Hale. Eliot was awarded a scholarship to Merton College, Oxford, in 1914. He first visited Marburg, Germany, where he planned to take a summer program, but when the First World War broke out he went to Oxford instead. In 1915 he taught English at Birkbeck, University of London. In 1916, he completed a doctoral dissertation for Harvard on knowledge and experience in the philosophy of F. H. Bradley. Before leaving the U.S., Eliot had told Emily Hale that he was in love with her. He exchanged letters with her from Oxford during 1914 and 1915, but they did not meet again until 1927. Less than 4 months later, Thayer introduced Eliot to Vivian Haig Wood, a Cambridge governess. They were married at Hampstead Register Office on June 26, 1915. After a short visit, alone, to his family in the United States, Eliot returned to London and took several teaching jobs, such as lecturing at Birkbeck College, University of London. The philosopher Bertrand Russell took an interest in Vivian while the newlyweds stayed in his flat. Some scholars have suggested that she and Russell had an affair, but the allegations were never confirmed. The marriage was markedly unhappy, in part because of Vivian's health problems. In a letter addressed to Ezra Pound, she covers an extensive list of her symptoms, which included a habitually high temperature, fatigue, insomnia, migraines, and colitis. This, coupled with apparent mental instability, meant that she was often sent away by Eliot and her doctors for extended periods of time in the hope of improving her health. And as time went on, he became increasingly detached from her. The couple formally separated in 1933 and in 1938 Vivian's brother, Maurice, had her committed to a mental hospital, against her will, where she remained until her death of heart disease in 1947. After leaving Merton, Eliot worked as a school teacher, most notably at Highgate School in London, where he taught French and Latin. He subsequently taught at the Royal Grammar School, High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. To earn extra money, he wrote book reviews and lectured at evening extension courses at University College London and Oxford. In 1917, he took a position at Lloyds Bank in London, working on foreign accounts. On a trip to Paris in August 1920 with the artist Wyndham Lewis, he met the writer James Joyce. Eliot said he found Joyce arrogant, and Joyce doubted Eliot's ability as a poet at the time, but the two writers soon became friends, with Eliot visiting Joyce whenever he was in Paris. Eliot and Wyndham Lewis also maintained a close friendship, leading to Lewis's later making his well-known portrait painting of Eliot in 1938. Charles Whibley recommended T.S. Eliot to Geoffrey Faber. In 1925 Eliot left Lloyd's to become a director in the publishing firm Faber & Guyer, where he remained for the rest of his career. At Faber & Faber, he was responsible for publishing distinguished English poets, including W. H. Auden, Stephen Spender, Charles Madge, and Ted Hughes. On June 29, 1927, Eliot converted from Unitarianism to Anglicanism, and in November that year he took British citizenship. He became a churchwarden of his parish church, St. Stephen's, Gloucester Road, London, and a life member of the Society of King Charles the Martyr. By 1932, Eliot had been contemplating a separation from his wife for some time. When Harvard offered him the Charles Eliot Norton Professorship for the 1933 academic year, he accepted and left Vivian in England. Upon his return, he arranged for a formal separation from her, avoiding all but one meeting with her between his leaving for America in 1932 and her death in 1947. Vivian was committed to the Northumberland House Mental Hospital in Woodbury Down, Manor House, London, in 1938, and remained there until she died. Although Eliot was still legally her husband, he never visited her. From 1933 to 1946 Eliot had a close emotional relationship with Emily Hale. From 1938 to 1957 Eliot's public companion was Mary Trevelyan of London University, who wanted to marry him and left a detailed memoir. From 1946 to 1957, Eliot shared a flat at 19 Carlisle Mansions, Chelsea, with his friend John Davy Hayward, who collected and managed Eliot's papers. Hayward also collected Eliot's pre-proofread verse, commercially published after Eliot's death as poems written in early youth. When Eliot and Hayward separated their household in 1957, Hayward retained his collection of Eliot's papers, which he bequeathed to King's College, Cambridge, in 1965. On January 10, 1957, at the age of 68, Eliot married Esme Valerie Fletcher, who was 30. In contrast to his first marriage, Eliot knew Fletcher well, as she had been his secretary at Faber & Faber since August 1949. They kept their wedding secret. The ceremony was held in St. Barnabas Church, Kensington, London. Eliot had no children with either of his wives. In the early 1960s, by then in failing health, Eliot worked as an editor for the Wesleyan University Press, seeking new poets in Europe for publication. After Eliot's death, Valerie dedicated her time to preserving his legacy, by editing and annotating the letters of T.S. Eliot in a facsimile of the draft of The Waste Land. Valerie Eliot died on 9 November 2012 at her home in London. Eliot died of emphysema at his home in Kensington in London, on January 4, 1965, and was cremated at Golders Green Crematorium.